If we may call the meeting to order. We will. Apologize to all for being 25 minutes late due to mechanical and digital inefficiencies here in the meeting room. Liz, would you call the roll, please?
Bob Calhoun.
Present.
Marty Mayo is not present. Lisa Pappas. Here. Tim Redmond.
Here.
Will Weber.
Here.
And Wiseman is here.
Okay, thank you.
And Barry is here.
Sorry to break in,
item.
Jessica. I see that people are talking, but I think the room mic must be muted. The Zoom symbol is not up on the screen, so it must be the room mic.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
And what he's saying.
Now, can you hear us?
No, thank you, Rob. Let me see here.
Rob, can you hear us? Hello,
Rob? Oh, I think not.
Rob.
Just check. Oh. The sounds. Off in your settings. Something, we just need a new, we're gonna undo this LPC chair one, because there's something strange about it.
Is this happening for
No, only the LPC.
every meeting?
No, every tap yesterday was, well, tap was a little better actually, wasn't it? It would tap,
Rob, can you hear us now?
but usually yes.
Rob is saying the room mic is muted.
Rob, can you hear us now? It's not that it's muted, I'm just trying to find the right one.
I'm just conveying a message.
No, thank you. Rob, can you hear us now?
He's saying the ceiling mic is muted.
Yeah, it's not, but
Okay.
yeah. That's not the issue, I'm just, there's something strange here on this. LPC setting.
Tim, you got a big visit to family coming up in next month? So you have a visit to family in California?
I could hear you guys a couple minutes ago, but now it sounds like you're completely muted. I think somebody was talking about family something. I can't hear you now.
I can't hear anybody either.
Okay, now can you hear us?
Yes, now we can hear you, Jessica.
Ding, ding, ding.
What was the
Okay.
trick there, Jessica?
It's a long story, there's not a small thing. There's a big problem with this LPC settings, so we'll talk about it later. It's-
Okay, maybe redo the whole thing and let us know.
Yes.
Okay. All right, we have done the call to order and the roll call. Next item of business is approval of the agenda. Everyone received the agenda? A couple minor changes here that I'd like to suggest. One, we need to deal with the resignation of Alec from our number, from the board and from this commission. We want to just insert briefly a comment from Tim regarding matters with American Family Trust for a further report later.
Farmland Trust.
Farmland Trust, excuse me. And also at the end of the meeting, we'd like to discuss change in meeting time. So are there any other suggested changes here to the agenda? If not, we'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
I make such a motion.
As amended, yes.
Okay,
And I'll second it.
all right. Can we just approve that voice vote? Yeah.
Voice your hand.
Yeah, raise your hand. Approved? Okay, good. All right. So regular approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Were there any comments, corrections that anyone has? I thought you did a good job. That's always. Okay, hearing none, we'll ask for approval of the minutes.
We need a motion in a second. Or-
Have a motion?
So moved.
Second, okay. All right,
And then all in favor?
all in favor, raise your hand. Got it, okay, moving right along. Welcome and public comments. We can hear you now, I think, and you can hear us, is that correct? Who would like to speak? Wait, they're not hearing or you don't want to speak?
I don't want to speak.
Okay. How about you, Rob, and I'm not sure who else is here. Do you have anything you'd like to say?
There's just 4 other members of the public, Rob, Pat, Pam, and
And who's the last one, Jessica?
Pam, you must have something to say. No? Are they hearing me? That's a vocal group out there. There's,
No, it was Michael's iPhone, Pam Boyd, Pat Stein, or Rob Pattinson. Anybody wish to speak?
oh, a little disappointed. I was preparing for one.
Ryan?
Huh? I've asked. All right. I guess I don't need to beg for comments. Thank you for attending the meeting. Reports of other commissions. If we had someone at the planning commission. No, that would have been Alec probably. Parks and Recreation. Yeah, what's going on?
Nothing spectacularly new. We're currently working on providing access to our 2 preserves north of I-94. One is Van Curler, which is actually off of Huron River Drive, and Joy Road actually spans between the 2 east-west highways. And the second one is the, let's see, Douglas, David, Marshall Preserve, which I don't know how we're gonna fit that on a sign.
Just down the road, right?
Yeah, it's on Marshall Road between the 2 ends and on the north side. And that's our 46-acre preserve.
That was the Loveland.
And it used to be Loveland, yeah, we used to call it the Loveland Preserve. And then we found out that she wanted to dedicate it to her former husband, right?
Who passed away.
Okay.
So there, I think I reported last about the fact that there are potential areas for small parking lots at both on Joy Road and Marshall. And in addition to that, there are some, I guess they're called sightline studies to make sure that where we're going to come off of Joy Road and off of Marshall Road is safe. And that's to be determined actually by the Wasatch or the Washtenaw County Road Commission. So they're the ones that get to review. Oh yeah, you can put anyone that wants to put a driveway in needs to go through them. So
Right.
we'll find out if they think it's safe, and if it is, we'll.
Have you concerns about being safe?
Oh yeah, if you remember Joy Road,
Yeah.
I think Alec told me that there's actually literally, you can go as fast as you can possibly go. I think it's like 55 degrees, 55 miles
It's
an hour.
not posted, so it's assumed to be 55.
Yeah, and cars go 55.
They go 65.
Road? Well, they go
I'm
60,
surprised you-
exactly. So we want to be very careful to make sure that wherever we end up putting a parking lot.
Yeah, there'll be people slowing down to look for the entrance, right? And with the
Exactly,
hills
yeah.
and- Yeah.
So anyway, we're being careful. And I think I reported that before, but basically just to say it again, that the parks folks continue to try to figure this out for both Van Curler and the new preserve on Marshall Road.
All right. Thank you. Kat, you were at the Trails and Alternatives.
That was yesterday. Just 3, again, not a whole lot, but Marjorie Kemp resigned, so that's one of their members, they're down 1 member. Anna Cohn has a new community, there's a community tab on the township website. And that's where she is posting everything, all her new programs.
Jessica, thanks for straightening it
No
out.
problem, sorry for the.
Thanks, Jessica. No, thank you for coming in.
Jessica, somebody just tried to come in the door there.
Oh, yeah, this should be open if they wanna join, I'll check it out.
Okay, please.
Just that, under the community tab on the township website will be all of Anna's new programs. So her, her Scio outside, the walks and things, all the work days that she's gonna be planning will be there.
Can you mention Saturdays at Scio Preserves is also there now?
That's part
We're
of Scio
not,
outside.
we don't, well, we
Right.
could continue to
That was last,
co-sponsor it, but really she's taken that over.
right, that was, yes, that's part of Scio outside now. And then the third thing I would mention, they're just discussing merging, parks and TAP. Because all of the TAP members' terms expire in December, I think. It was either November or December. And so the question is, they draw from the same millage. So, as I understand it, and so shouldn't they be a combined group of a certain number of people rather than, not 18 people, because there are 9 and 9? Yes?
Oh, I
Lisa?
thought she was
Yeah.
talking to us. Doing that.
So, yeah, and it's being discussed very thoroughly on the Parks Recreation Advisory Board for similar reasons. And the main impetus is the fact that we now have, as part of the millage, the new millage for parks and pathways, we now have a full-time professional on staff here. So it, you know, rather have her to go to 3 or 4 different meetings a month, try to kind of simplify things and have the parks and the pathways people in one advisory board. So she goes to one meeting and they all get to hear what each is doing, which obviously a lot of what we're doing with pathways is connecting preserves. And yet we have 2 separate meetings and many times we don't even hear what's
Okay,
going
all
on.
right, I think we understand that.
Yeah.
Would you, Liz, include the link to that website with the program information in our minutes as well? Just for the
Sure.
convenience of people who
I-
might.
Yes,
like to
I
pick
don't
it
know
up.
whether I mean, that's where she's gonna put it. I don't know what she has in there yet. She's working on that.
Okay.
But yes, I'll see what,
All right, wanna
I'll
make
see
it
what's in there.
available
Yep.
as soon as we can. Thank you. Well, and then we come to the Board of Trustees. I don't know how many people may have attended or watched the meeting on Zoom. Well, I did briefly, as long as I could manage it. But I don't know, I'm not really qualified to report. Nobody else was there?
Weren't there a couple planning commission recommendations that they had that I saw on the agenda that they were,
I didn't.
you didn't stay long enough to know? Okay. That's what interested me, is that there, I think something.
Did you pick up on it?
No, I just read the board packet. And
Yeah.
there was the Heron Estates. And then there was one up Baker Road. What's the name of that one? It's like 102 acres. There's a proposal for senior
Oh,
retirement home, I think.
yes.
You know
Does that
about
sound
that?
right? And it sounded like it was at the corner of Marshall and Baker.
So the access is where the traffic light is on Baker, where the exit ramp runs into Baker.
Oh.
Opposite that. And then the property is actually a ways back in. It's not at the corner.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, it's not, okay, that I wasn't sure, I tried to get it from the board packet, but I was clueless, but you're saying you come off the I-94
Exit ramp.
exit
heading,
ramp,
Heading west,
heading west, okay,
Baker Road.
I
There's
see,
a traffic light
right,
there, and then there's a long, narrow parcel that would be the access further back for this,
To the west or to the east?
to the west. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
okay,
So there's a bunch of houses right along Baker
Yeah.
Road,
right.
and it's behind those houses.
Okay, that's not critical property in any way, is it?
No, it is.
That we
I
should be
would
interested?
definitely
No,
say
it
it is. We've talked about that in here before,
Yeah,
that
Jim.
development.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my concern, trying to figure out, well, which property is it, and,
Yeah, it's a large property. I'm gonna say 95 acres or something like that.
yeah,
It runs from Marshall Road to the expressway. And then immediately to the west of that is the Breiningers Dairy Farm. Their home
Oh, okay.
property there. So it's
Yeah.
basically right next to that.
All right. Any other comments regarding BOT? All right, well, we missed Alec to report on that.
Well, I'm sorry, how far west, I can't remember, the western border of Scio Township?
Is Parker Road.
Is Parker.
Where the
So it's
Bridingers-
outside of our purview, right? That
No,
retirement home.
no,
No, it's right in just off of Jackson Road and I-94.
not Baker Road, not Jackson.
I'm sorry, Baker Road.
Oh, Parker Road, right, okay.
Yeah.
So Parker is the next one
Yeah.
west, right? It
From
doesn't go
Baker,
that
it's
far.
1 mile
It's in
west of
between,
Baker,
yeah.
and that's the township boundary. That's where the Bridingers Dairy Farm is, on a big parcel right there at the corner, the southeast corner of Marshall and Parker. And then this property, the Smith property, is immediately to the east of the Bridingers.
Okay. Is that farm in any sense in a protected status?
No,
No, okay,
neither of them.
all right.
Is it a fact that the board discussed what you're talking about, or are you just guessing?
No, it was in the board packet. There was a bunch of information. It was on the packet for
And was it,
possible.
but was it
I don't
under
know.
discussion? Were you at the board meeting? No, you or
It
listening?
was for discussion. Yeah,
You did hear it discussed?
no, it was in the board packet. I read,
Well, the board packet's just 100, long.
I read it. That's where it was.
Yeah, so at some point, they probably had a discussion about it, but none of us were tuned in or here.
Right.
And I'm sorry, Will, but is it of any interest to this commission?
Sure.
That
Absolutely.
parcel of land?
Yeah, it's
So-
top interest.
Do we have a plan to look into it? Barry, are you doing that?
Well, the petitioner has made a proposal. And that's being evaluated by the planning commission. That's where it stands at this point.
So it's at the planning commission for their, so it's a little premature for us to get involved, other than an opinion?
Well, actually, if it's probably gone through the planning commission at this point because it's on the board agenda for discussion at least.
Right.
Was not on the board this week.
It wasn't this week. It might have been 2 weeks ago then.
Okay, so last board meeting, anyone, Will, you attended, but have that?
Briefly.
Okay, well, I'm gonna X that as far as the minutes go then, because that was a previous board meeting. Is that right?
All right,
Sounds like it, yeah.
satisfied? We're not satisfied, but we know we have to look into this, so keep us posted, Barry, as you hear developments about that property, okay?
And vice versa, as we hear.
Yeah, right. All right, old business, we have an event coming up. Barry, you want to just say a little bit about it?
Yeah, so we had planned to have this little gathering of funding partners for the Wren's conservation easement purchase and subsequent sale to Mike Vestergaard using our Buy Protect Sell process. And so that is scheduled for this Sunday, which is the 16th of October at 2:00 p.m. This is not a public event. I've invited all of our funding partners, so all the board members, Scio board members have been invited, obviously the LPC members. I invited through Remy Long at the Greenbelt program, the Greenbelt Advisory Commission, as well as the City Council. I invited through Ginny Lycum from Washington County Parks, the Agricultural Lands Preservation Advisory Committee, ALPAC, that recommended funds that were approved by the County Parks Commission, so the Parks Commission is invited. I invited folks from the state of Michigan grant program that gave us money for this. And there's a state agricultural preservation fund board. It's been extended to them. And then I made invite to folks from the federal government, including the local NRCS district conservationist, Brian Thomas, who runs the federal grant program out of East Lansing. I invited Senator Stabenow. I don't expect you to be there. Haven't seen any response. But nevertheless, she was invited.
So in many cases, there'll be face-to-face meetings for the first time with these people.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly for a lot of them. And that could be a sizable group, which is why we didn't want to make it larger and open it up to the public beyond that. And it's really just an opportunity for all of us to meet each other and congratulate ourselves on a magnificent project completed. I could easily see there being 30 or 40 people there, so that's plenty. I will be bringing cider and donuts. And I'm going to just sort of introduce everybody. and make some comments about how it all came together, so everybody there can understand what the funding picture was and the buy, protect, sell process that we engaged for this. I've asked Mike to make a few comments about his excitement about being able to buy this property at a reasonable price, and what he plans to do with it going forward. I was out there last weekend just to sort of check it out. I hadn't been there since we closed, which was back in June, I think it was. He has mowed all the fields. There was, high hay out there that hadn't been cut, I think, in a couple of years. So he's cut that all and baled it. So there's a bunch of hay bales there. But there's no cows there yet, but I know that is his long-term.
No pumpkins and corn stalks stacked.
Nothing like that. No. At this time, he's only owned it for a few months now, and is still figuring some things out. But I know that his intention was to move cattle there at some point. It may not be until next spring.
Does he have plans for the house there?
I noticed that there was some kind of an exhaust coming out of the chimney. So either somebody's living there or they're at least just keeping the heat on, so pipes don't freeze and so forth. I didn't ask him about that. And last I heard, I don't think directly from him, he was thinking that it was not salvageable. It was just too expensive to refurbish it. But perhaps he'll answer that differently when we see him on Sunday.
His son was going over there. Like son.
Yeah, I remember that too. Anyway, we'll have a chance to ask him.
Yeah.
Somebody's at the door also.
Let me get it, Liz. No, she's gonna do it.
All right.
So again, 2:00 on Sunday, just for us and our funding partners. Pam Martin, who is my main contact for the Renz family, will be there with a couple of other family members. I also invited Erwin Martin, who lives right next door, former trustee and former LPC member, one of the catalysts for making this happen, as well as Jane Vogel, a former trustee, who was also somebody who was directly involved in making connections for us. But beyond that, I just said, let's keep it personal. Beg your pardon?
Jan Culbertson.
No.
Who's heading up the Sustainability Task Force.
No. Hey, Marty.
Hi, sorry.
Like this,
So,
this is the open
Lay
seat.
down a little bit, my thoughts.
Right for you.
so are name tags appropriate? So
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me.
Did you invite a representative from American Farmland Trust?
I did.
Okay,
So
so
Brian Bourdage was my main contact.
Yeah.
He's in Michigan.
same person.
And last I heard from him a couple of days ago, he wasn't sure if he was going to make it or not, but I did extend the invite to them.
Now, among us, everybody gonna make it? At least briefly, to the open house?
I'll be coming from Leelanau County, so hopefully there's no problems getting here.
Okay, well, it's an opportunity to make a human impression on the people we
Yeah.
really count on and
Definitely.
will count on in the future.
Yeah.
So, be friendly.
Yeah,
Neatly
be a
dressed.
friendly,
I do.
eat some donuts
Right.
and cider.
I did a similar kind of thing when we closed a project about a year ago in Webster Township. I mentioned this before, I think, but the folks who own and started Argus Farm Stop here in Ann Arbor bought a big farm over on Strawberry Lake Road. And there was only 4 funding partners for that one. We have 5 for this one. But nevertheless, it was the same. It was the state, it was the feds, it was the county and the township in that case. And so we just did a similar gathering. And in that case, we did a couple of little presentations, half an hour or so. And then we offered tours of the property. There's a set of buildings in that case, and there was woods, and there was the fields. And so people split off and went their various ways. And so I'm thinking of something similar for this.
So does that give you an indication of the likelihood of percentage of invitees attending? How did you do in that event? Sounds similar.
Yeah, there was, I think 30, 40 people at that event.
Okay.
Yeah, which was funny.
All right, and I think the weather is pretty good, cool, but possibly not too moist, right?
The last time I saw it was a less than 10% chance of rain, so.
Yeah, so it could be fun, a
That's
good fall
could be fun.
afternoon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we'll have a chance to walk around the farm and chat with Mike and so forth.
I think it would be good for Mike to say something about his plans to engage the public and bring in kids and have,
Yeah.
some
It
learning
is a good idea.
opportunities.
He's on for speaking? Is that
Yes.
right? Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Excuse me, Will, it's Pam Boyd. Can you let in another resident into the meeting, please? Thank you. On
Oh.
Zoom.
Oh, okay. Not attending to that now. Anything more, Barry, on that?
See you all Sunday.
Okay, we'll
See
be
you
there.
Sunday.
Welcome, whoever it is that may have just arrived. Are they in?
We need a Mac person.
Oh, and Matt, okay, sorry. I got confused with the right click, left click.
And if there's a name, Lisa, can you tell me?
Jonathan.
Oh, Jonathan Greenberg, okay.
Thanks, Pam.
No problem, thank you.
All right. Welcome, Jonathan. Can you hear us? Jonathan? Yeah, he's probably muted. Okay, now new business.
Old
Oh, I
business,
know, let's
old
talk-
business Still, millage renewal report.
Millage renewal, excuse me. Did you want to say a few words? Maybe more than a few?
So we've done quite a bit of promotion. Hats off to Liz and Barry for help. We've gotten over 75 of the signs out throughout the township and all the different quadrants. We've done some mailings, targeted mailings, considering maybe doing another one if we can pull it off, but we've used direct mail. Made some bumper stickers. We plan to make them available to people on Sunday. Here's one for you if you'd like it. It ties in with some of the other branding that we've used. We've done social media on Nextdoor and Facebook. We've gotten endorsements from multiple organizations, as you know, and some of those have done their own publicity on our behalf. Huron River Watershed Council included it in their newsletter. So between the signs, social media, bumper stickers, mailings, we've done pretty much everything that we can do. We're just a little over 3 weeks away, so hopefully.
Right. Yeah, we'll be finding out right just before our next meeting what the results are.
Scio Township Sustainability, what's the name of it?
Task force.
Sustainability Task Force is assigned the job of looking at the sustainability matters for the township. To say that simply, but Jan Culbertson is chairing that. And Jan sent out an email to all of the task force members, and they're divided into 4 or 5 different task forces, which I could name for you all.
But they sent this millage information?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jan said this is a very important issue, and because it's related to sustainability and land preservation and so on, that's related to sustainability. And so she included a copy of Will's letter, and
Oh, good. I was gonna say, we need to get Will's letter out.
everyone will read it.
Yeah, thanks
Yeah,
Pam
that's a
Boyd
great
for
letter.
that article in the Scio Community Newsletter. We've repurposed that copy on social media.
Yeah, Pam, really, thanks. Fair and balanced, right?
Now, that was a great, why to vote yes. I read it, and was impressed, so.
Good.
Okay.
Good.
That's it.
Anything more on millage? Any other ideas people wanted to offer the committee here? All right. So one other thing, why don't we put you in here, Tim? Just say a word about your planned meeting with American Farmland Trust.
Yeah, so on Monday, you guys probably all got my email. I invited anyone who wants to come to the 3 o'clock meeting on Monday in Dexter somewhere. It's not determined yet to come. Barry said he might be able to be there.
Looks like I can.
Yeah, good.
So you'll update the meeting location to us?
Yeah, certainly I will, particularly for anybody who wants to come to it.
And that's American Farmland Trust, that's your,
Yes.
okay.
But let me just say a couple of things about why you might want to come. And my intention is to bore into what the Farmland Trust does and where it gets its money and, you know, what they're really up to, but they've got their organization divided into senior staffers and national program managers, and then a bunch of regional people, and they've got quite a few people working for them, but the senior staffers work on, there's an national agricultural land network that tries to keep track of all the agricultural lands, you know, which federal government does too, but it's from a slightly different point of view. They've got a farm legacy program, a farmland protection program, and they've got a bunch of research and you know, other programs too under the senior staff. The national programs are land protection, climate initiative and policy, women for the land, conservation easements, water resources, and farming for cleaner water, climate and soil health, farms for a new generation. They recognize the need for farmers to come along. Regenerative agriculture, agricultural conservation initiatives, soil health and biochar, agricultural economics, and finally, resilient agriculture. So, I think that group, that large national organization could be a good ally for us in a number of different ways. And
Both information
You wanna-
and funding,
I'm sorry,
both information and potential funding.
I don't know about that. I'm gonna
That's what we're
ask
gonna find
the
out.
person, yeah. So anybody want to come and meet this person on Monday at 3 o'clock? We'll be somewhere in Dexter, and I'll let you know.
Good. Thanks for setting that up, Tim. Okay, then I think we can move to new business. Barry, you have our open session consultants report.
Yes, ready for that? Sent you all my report for this. We still don't have the money in hand from the Ren's easement from the federal government. But I haven't heard anything for several weeks, so I think everything's been provided. And it's just a matter of cranking it through the enormous cogs of the federal bureaucracy. So sometime soon, but nothing in hand. I promised Will that I would let you know first, but then shortly thereafter, everybody else will hear. In regards to the projects that we have contracts for and are hence discussed in open session, we have two. One of them is the Delhi Woods Estates, the Burnham property. Haven't heard anything out of him for a while now. Previously, I was working primarily with Rosie Hall Donaldson at Washtenaw County Parks. And I think I reported before that she's taken a job now with the Greenbelt program. So I'm dealing with her supervisor, who I've known for a long time, and the former head of the Greenbelt program, Ginny Lycum. And Ginny and I had a meeting a couple of weeks ago just to go over all the projects the county parks has committed funds to, this being one of them. And she asked where things stand on this property. And I said, he's got a mortgage that he's trying to get removed or subordinated so we can proceed with the conservation easement. And Ginny mentioned that they have a lot of great projects in the pipeline. They've only committed $70,000 to this, but it's a meaningful amount of money for them. And so they're getting antsy. They'd like to either move this along or possibly withdraw their funds. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. I'd be happy to contact Tom once again and see where things are at. And I can report to you next month. And we can decide where we want to go with it.
Okay.
This is that property.
This is that 23 acres, is that right?
It is 23 acres at the northeast corner of West Delhi and Miller.
Right.
And I haven't been by there in a while. Tim was the one that informed me / us sometime last fall that there had been some disturbance to the property. It was a backhoe that had run through the woods and dug a number of test pits, which I could see from the road, at least a couple of them. And I brought that to Tom's attention. He told me what it was for after the fact, which did make me very happy. And said that those would be repaired once things dried out in the spring. I have not been back there to confirm that. He said he would let me know when that happened so I could confirm that and see the extent of the damage that was done. He's not contacted me. So I don't know what the status is.
It's pretty dry.
Oh, it's been dry for a long time.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of opportunity to do
Yeah,
that.
dry, but in terms of perking, that water sat there a long time.
So for now, I'm just bringing it to your attention. I will reach out to him again and say, where are you at?
Yeah, it's not a matter in this case of changing the price or renegotiating the deal, right? It's under contract, right? So it's either he pays up or, you know, he doesn't and we go on and use our money somewhere else.
Correct.
You know, I joined in December 2020. This has been on the agenda all the time I've been here. And it's been in the same holding pattern with the same report for all these months. So it makes me wonder if we should move on from it. And, you know, you all have more history, but.
Probably should communicate that to Tom.
It's a 2017 application.
Okay.
And we didn't act on
Yeah.
it right away, but it has been several years
Uh-huh,
since
uh-huh.
we engaged in the,
2017, really?
that's the application.
Well,
Yes,
we've all grown older
2017
since then, haven't we?
Yeah, I'm trying to see when,
Okay,
let's see if I can find it real quick. When we actually entered into the purchase agreement for that. Jack Knowles signed it on behalf of Scio Township in June of 2020. So it's been over 2 years.
okay,
So I will get with him about that. And then the other item that is for public consumption is the Wisely and Fixed property on Joy Road next to Van Curler Preserve. That we were originally thinking was going to be an addition that we would use as the, access point for a parking area. But it sounds like now that's not the
We'll
case.
see.
We don't know.
We don't know.
We're still gonna buy it. We're under
Still
contract.
gonna buy it.
We've got funds from the city and county to support that purchase. And we need to do a revision to the purchase agreement that's been assigned to Township Council, not Scio. Initially was Jim Fink, and then I think it's Jim's, well, it's a relation. I'm not sure if it's his daughter or somebody else, but Mariah Fink is the one that I've been interacting with. She asked me some questions about it last Friday, I think it was, and has not responded to my response to her. So it's in her lap at this point.
so is the contingency of highway department approving access, it all tied up with willingness to finish this deal, Barry? Is she waiting on that
No.
also? No.
No,
Okay,
it was a matter of not being able to find the record of when the board of trustees approved the LPC recommendation.
but now that's all done, right? And you're just waiting
Not
for
that I know of.
Oh, really?
No.
Oh, so the board still has to approve the funding.
Well,
Apparently has, but we don't have a
we can't
written
find
record of it.
Okay,
and,
great.
and
Is that right, Barry?
yes, that's correct. I went through all my documents and went over the township meeting agendas and
The
minutes.
mysterious approval.
Yeah, and so we just said, let's kind of start over again.
Yeah.
And it's in Mariah's hands at this point.
All right.
But we're still moving ahead with that one. it's still, a nice addition to the reserve
Oh,
regardless.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the beautiful field.
So that's all for the open session report. Will and I had a conversation a couple of days ago that we thought it would be helpful for the LPC and the public to get a refresher on the funding for the program over time and how our funds have been utilized since then. So I sent you all a couple of tables. One of them is one that I get from Sandy Egler here at the Township that provides audited data for our program as soon as the audit is approved by the Board of Trustees. And so the data that I have available in this table, this is the comp statement Excel table, is through the end of fiscal year 2021, which was March 31 of that year. So the audit for fiscal year 22, which wrapped up this past March, is in process right now. So we don't have audited figures for fiscal year 22 at this point. So there's always a time lag between when we have the audited approved figures and when I fill in this table with those data, but that's forthcoming.
Is this publicly available?
Yes, absolutely.
And where would somebody find it?
I'm not sure it's on the website anywhere, but I'd be happy to provide this table to anybody who requested it.
Okay, so people could get in touch with you?
Yes, absolutely.
Was this part of the agenda packet that we sent out?
Yes,
Oh, this was the attachment that, okay.
correct. One of
great,
them,
great.
yes.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so that's available online, I guess, with the.
Okay, so
agenda.
that would be with
as
our
well.
agenda.
It's not with this agenda.
It was, I sent it to the township.
So there's two parts to this. One is the revenues that have been collected through the millage to date. And then the second part is the expenses, the expenditures that have been made. And for the revenues, so the millage was first passed in 2004 in November. It appeared on that winter tax bill for everybody and was collected. And so as of March 31 of 2005, that was the first time that we had funds available for our purposes.
So would we, I mean, you're gonna get to this, but will we project forward the same kind of sequence of funds available following an approval of a millage? That
Yes, correct. So the first year we got $437,000 through the collection of real property taxes. There's several other items in that table, returned captured taxes, personal property tax revenue. Sometimes there's interest and penalties on taxes and interest earnings. So the bottom line there, which is number 15, is the total amount of funds that were received through the millage. So we collected $437 and just from straight up property taxes, but at the end of the day, it was $532 that was generated.
So this is what I sent. I sent the wrong thing then with our agenda, didn't I? This is.
Oh.
That is something totally different that I did not.
So
I did not attach that to our agenda.
So it's available
That's my
if people want
mistake. But how can we get it out to the people that need to see that?
yeah, great question.
well, you're gonna have approved minutes going out, right, from the minutes we've just approved. Is it possible?
Yeah, well, I could, yeah, I think Christine's
that's
friend,
fine.
I'll just make sure. Would you mind resending that to me? 'Cause
Sure.
Somehow I lost it in my, if you could resend that to me, I will ask Christine Fran to post our minutes and then separately post this audited report.
If we wanted, we could make it available in the chat for the Zoom, but that's just a limited audience, but it is possible.
I think, yeah, but I'd like to have it on the township
yeah,
website
that would be
too.
better.
Yeah, thank you, Barry.
Yes.
Okay.
So the first year was a total of $532,000 and change. It increased for the first 4 years up to $711,000. And then starting in 2009, we had this little recession that you may remember, and funding dropped for several years. all the way down to 575. So we went from 711 down to 575. And then it kind of held steady for a couple of years, and it started to increase again. And then in 2016 was when Dexter, which used to be a village and was part of Scio Township, became a city and was no longer part of Scio Township. So revenues increased to 608,000 in 15, and then down to 535 in 16, because we didn't have the city, the village, providing revenues for us anymore.
Was there one of these 525 arrangements with that
No,
change?
no, that was a vote of the people of the then village of Dexter to become a city. It had nothing to do with sewers or anything like that, which is a 425, which you're asking about. This was just them saying, we don't want to be a village anymore, we want to be a city. And they approved that through a referendum in the village, and consequently they became a city as a separate entity from Scio Township. So since then, so we went from 608,000 in 15 to 535 in 16, and then it's been on the increase, so that again, the last year for which audited data are available is fiscal year 2021, and that was $621,000. So, and actually, the last 3 years are 616, 619, 621. So it's been pretty steady for 3 years now. So looking forward, I'm anticipating that we will have a similar amount of revenue shown in the 22 audit, something around 620,000.
And when is it expected to be done, that audit?
It's in, I can tell you that as of a week or two ago, the auditors were in the front conference room and cranking through stuff. So at some point here in the near future, they will have their audit complete. They will present it to the Board of Trustees.
And after that, we can post it. After the board sees it, we can post it.
After the board approves the fiscal year 22 audit, then I will add it to my table,
Okay.
and it will be public information. I mean, the audit's public information also.
Okay, great.
But, you know, in terms of our program, I will plug those data into this table as well.
I see.
But that amount doesn't correspond to what we will get in January from the current year, does it? I mean, it will be likely more, you think, than 621?
I think it's fair to assume that it will be something similar, since the last 3 years have all been right around there. It might be a couple $1,000 more. But I think 620 is a safe number.
Yeah.
To think
Have you
about.
had any indication from the assessor as to the trend in property values in the township that might be predictive of our share of the revenue?
No,
Okay.
I'm just going by previous year's data. So that means we have 2 more collections at something around 620. So the audit, this year's audit, which is through March 31st of this year, will tell us how much money we got last year in last year's levy.
Okay,
And then we have 2 more levies. One of them is going to show up on the winter tax bill here very soon. And then 1 more levy has been authorized by the voters, which would be in
23
2023, correct?
and available in 2024. Is that right? In other words, if the millage fails, that would be the last.
That's the last authorized collection at this time. That's correct. So about $1.2 million, 600,000 times 2
Okay,
is what we have. We can expect the last 2 levies to generate.
all right. So
Plus
as
we
we
have
look
an-
forward, being responsible fiduciaries with millage, we have to be cautious in what we project as our possible purchases when you're out there negotiating, right?
Correct.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have a chance to check with Sandy before our meeting here, but last I heard there was about $200,000 left in the account,
How much?
about 200,000. But that is absent the reimbursement on the Ren's property, which is $868,550. So once that comes in, we'll be north of $1 million.
So as of a year and a half ago, as of 3/31/21, we had 621K to work with and expended 102K. So that those funds carried over, and a lot of that went to the Wren's purchase.
Correct.
But there's still a balance of, what did you say again?
About 200,000 was the last I heard a couple of months ago, and we haven't had any new revenue, and we also haven't made any major expenditures, so it's something around that.
Okay.
Sandy's, very responsive whenever I ask her for a current statement about how much we have available to us. I didn't think about asking her ahead of time, but within a couple of days, she always provides that information.
Yeah, and have you had any concerns, given the controversy here with, financial reporting? Have you had any concerns that we're not getting the money, or that the money isn't being properly accounted for in terms of what you can see from the audit is our predicted revenue and the amount that's reported to you is available?
Yes, no concerns whatsoever.
Okay.
Every time that we have needed funds for a project, the funds are there.
Yeah, and no solicitation of those funds other than Jessica trying to nibble away at them?
Correct. I have no indication that the funds have been used for any other purpose besides what we are charged with doing.
Okay.
And Barry, you made the point at one of our meetings recently that, or some other time, that most of our funds actually go directly to the title company.
When we expend, so taxes are collected,
Right.
and the township collects taxes for everything that's on your tax bill.
Right.
And then doles it out to the intermediate school district and the community college and the extra school, the whole laundry list.
Right.
That's the township's responsibility. Some of that goes for our program and is held internally, along with the general fund and the parks,
Sure.
millage, and whatever else that's Scio Township funds. Yeah, so
We don't handle that money. It goes directly to the title company.
So when we're looking to close a project, we have our funds that are sitting in an account. And as I said, they've always been there for us. And then when we go to close, we wire our money to the title company, and all of our partners, with the exception of the state of Michigan, also wire their money directly to the title company. So it does not flow through us.
We're not handling $2.97 million. We're not, that's the title company's job.
Correct. Everybody else, again, with the exception of the state of Michigan, wires their money directly to the title company. Now, the funny thing about that is that even though the federal money for these easement projects never hits our account, it goes directly to the title company, and then they dole it out from there.
Okay.
To pay for the easement price, they pay for the taxes, whatever it needs to be covered. They take care of all that. We never touch that money.
The escrow for the septic system, for example, that's supposed to go in
Correct.
at the Wren's farm if it's ever used for that purpose.
But there is and I don't know what the number is, but there is a threshold for all federal grants that are received by the township. And if you exceed that amount, then there has to be a special audit conducted.
Okay.
And some of those federal grant awards they do come directly to the township for construction of roads or whatever it might be. I don't know what all goes into that. And yet, when we get $868,550 from the federal grant program, or whatever, even though the money never flows through Scio Township, it goes directly to the title company. That's still part of the overall federal package.
Right.
And so if it goes above that certain threshold, it dings this special audit that needs to be conducted. So there are some years when the audit costs, for example, are there's one that's $2,600 and one that's $1,370. By and large, it's a couple $100, $200, $300, $400 for auditing the LPC's business, if you will. It's only when we have those excessive federal grant awards, and I think in combination with other federal grant awards that actually do go into the township's bank accounts, that it triggers this other audit.
Gotcha. Okay.
Barry, are we in a position to accept donations from citizens
Sure.
for a project? And
Absolutely.
how would that money be accounted for?
I would suggest that people would write a check to Scio Township, and in the memo area, they would put land preservation program or something of that nature. And hopefully the accounting folks would recognize that and put it into account number 242-402. We haven't had that happen.
Yeah, but it would be receipted then from the township to the donor.
Correct. And it is a tax deductible contribution, just like you were given to
Okay.
a nonprofit, a 501c3 entity.
Well, given the enthusiasm that we've seen for preservation, that may be a source of additional funds if we,
Could be.
people make offers.
Absolutely. We won't turn it down.
Can I ask a
That's for sure.
question?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain about the portion that goes to the Scio Township Downtown Development Authority? Is that a standard procedure? I think some people are perceiving it as some sort of loophole. So I just thought it might be good to make that clear.
Yeah, so here's my understanding of that.
Mhm.
The tax for this program applies to all properties within the township, whether it's your house
Mhm.
or a farm or any business.
Any real property, even within a business, right? Like machinery, for example, I think.
That I don't
When I had a
know.
business, I was surprised I had to pay for computers and things.
Yeah,
Personal property.
there's
Personal
this
property.
line for personal property tax revenue. I'm not sure what that is, to be honest with you.
They can dig pretty deep for
It's
that.
not insignificant. It's $40,000.
But they capture 10% from all. I'm seeing some questions on Nextdoor about it, so.
So here's my understanding of that. The Downtown Development Authority is a defined area along Jackson Road.
Yeah.
And so their properties are subject to this tax, as well as all the other taxes that show up on your tax bill.
And we fall within that? Oh, go ahead, finish what you were saying.
The land preservation village covers the entire township, all properties within the township, including those in the DDA. But there is, and this is going back a few years, DDA properties get, I think I might call it a rebate on at least some portion of, I think, a number of taxes that are levied in the township, including ours, and maybe some or all. So they're not paying for that.
That's not true.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's not true.
This is as far as I know.
Right.
But it's a
I know-
standard
There's
I know
procedure.
for
There's some relief that the properties within the DDA
the
get
Parks
from
and
our
pathways,
village
same
as well as
question.
others.
No.
Why is money going to the DDA? And it's the same answer.
But it's a standard procedure, other villages or other funds have the same
Apparently,
thing.
I can only speak for this one, and I can only speak for Parks and Pathways. I don't know about the fire.
Okay, so it's standard procedure and there's no
Well-
funny business. Okay,
Well,
Correct, and that's the extent of my knowledge on that.
I just
remember
wanted-
asking this a long time ago,
Oh,
how
and-
come the DDA is taking money out of our
right, there's always questions. We had the same ones when we did the Parks and Pathways. It's like, what is this DDA thing?
Yeah.
And you get the answer, you understand it for about 20 minutes, and then it's fuzzy again.
There's
Like,
some-
why? Right, and
There's some
so,
special treatment of properties in the
That's
DDA,
right.
so they don't get
so
overwhelmingly
thank you
taxed.
for refreshing my memory. Now I get it.
well, it's a shame some people aren't voting for the village because they think that there's something going on there.
This has
which
been going
is
on
not
forever,
true.
and
Yeah.
it's not,
Yeah.
it's nothing.
How much is it?
What line are you looking at there?
I was looking at them.
And if you read the language and what we're all voting on for November 8th, it says, it's revealed
Right,
in the language saying the DDA gets its cut.
Right.
So, I mean, it's not a hidden cost, it's there.
it's always been there, and like I said, I asked that question years ago, and this is as much as I remember, and
Right.
Well,
I
thank
was
you.
I
Now,
was
you've
satisfied.
explained it a lot more clearly than anyone has ever explained it to me.
Yeah, when you own a house or a farm in Scio Township or anywhere in Michigan, there is that's your homestead property. And so there are certain taxes from which you are exempt. And one of those is an 18 mil levy for properties that are not your personal residence. And that includes farm properties as well. So you can own several pieces of farmland, but they all, as I understand it, get all grouped together. Like the Breiningers, for example, own their home farm, and then they have another property further north on Parker. It's separate from their home farm, but it's all considered to be their farm property. And so that's exempt from this 18 mil assessment that goes, that is applicable to properties that are not your home. So if you own a second house and it's not your primary residence, it applies to that. And then any business it applies to as well.
All the auto dealers are paying that additional?
Correct, is my understanding. And so I believe that those then that are in the DDA have some relief from other taxes. So they're not paying more and more and more, is my understanding of that. But again, this is going back probably 15 years when I first asked the question. But
So it's kind of an incentive to develop in the DDA for those businesses because
Correct.
they get a little tax relief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then on the expenditure side of things, as I mentioned, the audit fees a moment ago, there's the funds that we use to pay for services from Carlisle Workman Associates on occasion, to pay for me, legal fees are the attorneys that we engage for that. Those are the main expenses. There's a few of the things like advertising and miscellaneous that end up being pretty small overall. The big cost, of course, is the land and easement costs. So we're actually buying an easement or buying a piece of property. That's line number 971 there. And then the following line, 971.100 is the land and easement acquisition costs. And so that's all of the appraisals, survey, environmental assessments.
Title company also? Who pays the title company?
I'm gonna guess I know that comes out of the land and easement number, because when we go to close, we're expending our funds for the actual purchase of land or an easement, but we're also buying the title insurance policy, covering some, closing costs, recording fees, and then that all gets lumped into the land and easement cost. The acquisition cost is just survey, environmental, appraisal.
But as the buyers, we pay the title company and those title costs.
Yes, correct. That's been something that we started from the beginning as it's a small, but it's an
It
incentive.
makes it more attractive to the seller.
Yeah, I mean, it's a, whenever we, you may recall, make a recommendation to expend funds for purchasing land or an easement. There's the purchase price and identification of other funding sources within the recommendation. And then the bottom of it is, and up to $5,000 for closing costs. And it's usually $2,000 or $3,000, but we put it a little bit higher just to cover everything. And that's what those costs are. The title insurance policy, depending on the size of the expenditure, there's sort of a flat fee, and then the higher the value of the property. So a $3 million easement's going to cost a lot more than a $300,000 land purchase. So it might be $2,000 kind of flat fee, and then it goes up from there. We covered that cost. And recording fees, the title company charges a $200 fee, I think, for their staff to make sure everything gets signed and is properly executed, and then takes it to the Register of Deeds to record. That's their fee for that. So all that gets lumped into line 26 on this table, the land and easement cost. So the following line is just appraisal, survey, environmental. Legal's covered somewhere else.
What kind of things are covered under contracted services?
That's me.
Okay. Consultant is different.
That is Carlisle Workman Associates. So when we
Oh,
ask
got it.
them to do an evaluation of a property or update the protected lands map or
Okay.
anything of that nature, that's what that is.
Barry, maybe you said this, but why is there a $1.8 million difference between the revenue and the costs up to date, since 2005? If you subtract the costs or the expenditures, what are they called here? Total expenditures. From the total revenue, there's $1.8 million difference there.
It's less than that, Jim. If you look at it, 10,196 minus 8,398.
80, that's 1.8 million.
No, it's less.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it is. Anyway,
What are what two numbers are you talking about?
I'm just curious, Barry, why we're.
So we have either money in the bank or money coming in
Oh, I'm sorry.
from this federal grant award that we are getting reimbursed. That puts us north of $1 million. And again, we've already collected funds for fiscal year 22, but they're not reflected here because the audit hasn't been completed yet. So we're always lagging behind. That we don't, the data are never absolutely up to the moment.
Yeah, I get that.
So Barry, what you said is you only update this, what you're looking at, generally does. But once the audit has been completed and approved by the board.
Correct.
Okay, so this doesn't include anything for the last year.
No.
That's
year and a
correct.
half.
Neither
Year and a half.
revenues nor expenditures. That's correct.
So when you say, I think you said we have 200,000 in the bank, that's not reflected here. It's reflected in our accounts, our township accounts. You said we currently have 200,000.
Correct.
available.
Well, these numbers are from a year and a half ago.
Yeah. So
So this is past history.
correct, but that's all the information that we have to date. And then we'll get audited figures. I'll plug them into here.
Okay.
And then we'll be closer to actual numbers, but we're always expending some funds too. So
So is what
it's
Tim,
never perfect.
is what Tim is pointing out a concern to you or
No.
not? Okay.
No, and never has been. We're just, we're dealing with data that are a year and a half old at this point.
All right, I think if we can wrap up the questions here and go to closed session, we're kind of running out of time. I know we've got a lot to talk about.
I do want to mention quickly, Will, that there was the second table that I provided to you all ahead of time was the expenses summary table. And so I take the data from that first table that we were just discussing and plug it into this second table.
All right.
And this is one that gets distributed to the Board of Trustees every quarter, along with the quarterly report.
It says through 3/31/22, is that the one?
Because yes, actually, I when I updated it for the June quarterly report, I didn't change the date. And so the figures that you see on this table are actually through June 30th, even though it says March 31st.
Okay, so.
I changed the numbers, but did not change that date. And there were no changes between June 30th and September 30th. So the June 30th numbers, which is what you have in front of you,
Okay.
are the most current numbers there. So these are all the properties that we have been involved in, the 36 purchases, and how much we've spent by category, and what percentage of that is. And then the column G is the administrative costs. And so I lumped together there the cost for me as your staff person, which, referring back to the previous table, and just doing a quick calculation of those costs divided by the total expenditures is 5.8% of the total expenditures. And then another 5.8% is for the due diligence, the survey, environmental, appraisal, legal. So 11.6% of total expenditures have been for non-acquisition costs. which means that 88.4% actually goes for land and easement acquisitions. Again, these are, data that are a year and a half old, so we're never quite perfect on this, but this at least gives you an indication of where funds have been spent by category and for administration. That's the first tab. The second one shows you the total property values and the Scio share for each one of those purchases. So the total property values are over $20 million. We've spent about 8.4 million, which is 41% of the total property value. And that means we're leveraging at $1.50 of outside funds for every dollar that we're expending, which is good.
Yeah, that's great.
It's amazing. I mean, it's not even 1-to-1, it's more than that.
It's more than 1-to-1.
So
Considerably.
we bring in 8, somebody else brings in enough to add up to 12.
The next tab
That's
is
amazing.
showing you by project where all the other funding came from for every property that we've closed on, which is over $12 million. And then it's broken down by whether it was a discount from the landowner off the appraised value, federal program, Greenbelt, county parks, and a couple of state programs.
And if the millage is defeated, we're just throwing all that money in that matching.
You got to have money to get money. That's how it works. And then the last tab is just the natural features on these properties. Total acres, how much is in woods, wetlands, farmland, and so forth, just so we have
And that totals 1709, is that right?
That's correct, currently. And about 45% of that is in natural features, woods, wetlands, streams, and so forth. 750 acres of farmland, and so forth.
Mary, do you know how we compare? I mean, 88.4% going to land. That seems like a good number.
It's a fantastic number, actually.
It's a fast, so
Yeah.
that's better than average for similar.
It's way better than average.
It's way better than average.
So do you have a standard to compare to nationwide or, other land conservancy figures? So how does that compare in terms of efficiency?
Well, the one advantage that you all have here, as well as your neighboring townships, is that I'm not an employee. And so you're not paying for my bennies and my retirement. I'm doing that on my own as a contractor. And that's a big chunk, that's not to say that having staff is a bad thing.
Your staff here is free.
Yes. But that runs up the cost quite a lot. So you could run as efficient of a program as this one is. But if I was your employee and you were paying my bennies, then we'd be looking at 20 to maybe even 25% of the total expenditures would be for staff time and related things. So the fact that we're logging in at 88% instead of 75% or 70%.
And the percent that I was at the Zoom desk, but it's like 5% pays.
5.8%. From that first table, if you just take
Yeah, okay.
the amount that has been expended on me over 18 years and divide that by the
Yeah.
total revenues, I think it is. It's 5.8%. And then another 5.8 for all of the due diligence, legal, and so forth.
So again, sorry, I belabor this, but
Yeah.
say the Nature Conservancy or the Legacy Land Conservancy, do you know how they do? I mean, that's often how a nonprofit is judged by
Yep.
how much of the money goes to the principal cause versus staff time and other expenses.
Yeah, and they do other things too that we don't do, like educational programs and land management and so forth. So it's not quite an apples to apples comparison. We either farm that out to another part of township government or don't do them. And we also don't do fundraising like Legacy or Nature Conservancy or American Farmland Trust.
Which is a costly element.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so, and AFT does lots of other things. Nature Conservancy and Legacy are primarily land conservancies. AFT does that work, but does lots of other lobbying and policy work and educational activities. So that's the less applicable, I would say, of these other organizations. But just to think in terms of Nature Conservancy or Legacy or any kind of land conservancy, their costs are still gonna be substantially higher because they're doing other activities that we don't do. Education management, in particular fundraising. So my understanding is that those are usually, north of 20%, can be up to 30% of the funds that you donate to those entities get used for non-acquisition costs, if you will.
Right, thank you.
So we come out way ahead on that.
Right. All right, well, it's getting late. Is there anything more to wrap up here, Barry?
Not on that.
Anybody have a final question for Barry? Okay, well, we're about to go into closed session after a motion to do so. For those people who are listening, I don't believe we're likely to have a vote based on your projection,
We have no-
so we won't reconvene for a vote. The thing we'll reconvene for will be.
Will,
What about,
what, Jonathan, hang on. Will, excuse me, would you allow two residents, please, who were not at the beginning of the meeting to speak their public comments? That would be
Did we miss
Jonathan.
some people? Oh, I thought I made a plea for comments, but some people were apparently not hearing me.
They weren't present at the beginning of the meeting.
They weren't present.
So,
All right,
so the-
before we go into closed session, let me invite public comments, 3 minutes, if you will.
thank you. It would be Jonathan Greenberg, followed by Rob Pattinson. Thank you.
I was hoping Rob would go first, but oh well. So, hey, yeah, I have a couple of issues with the characterization of those who are against the millage. It does not do your side well to spread rumor and innuendo based on conversations on Nextdoor. There are much bigger, and I won't spend time going into the detail. My guess is Rob will, but I can't believe you have people attributing this to wanting to saying that there's some kind of hanky-panky going on with the EPA. The issues around us protesting this millage are well beyond this group, and misrepresenting our message and our desire to do that doesn't do you any good. It just makes you look like hacks. Twice, 3 times during this meeting, whatever her name is, made those obnoxious comments attributing the dislike of your the township politics and Township Hall's BOT. It's nothing to do with you. This meeting just sounded like a bunch of congratulatory back patting. I don't know what we've accomplished here. Have a nice day.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else?
Rob Pattinson from Scio Township.
Hello, Rob.
I have a slightly different perspective than Jonathan. I wrote some stuff here. Let me just read it. First of all, I hope you all understand that I believe the LPC is the most important and effective program in Scio, second only in importance to the fire department. Will, you wrote a very compelling and effective appeal to vote yes. Thank you for that. In 2012, Scio passed the roads SAD, and then in 2020, they took $500,000 from that fund and gave it to TAP, the Transportation Alternative Planning Committee. Our current supervisor has a penchant for pet projects. And the LPC millage will bring in over $7 million to Scio. And here's my concern. Is there any safeguard in the millage language to prevent a similar raid on the LPC funds to apply them to something else, another pet project? Another resident noted in the language of the LPC millage that one thing they said was protect drinking water sources. Does that mean that money can be taken out of the LPC fund and applied towards Gelman cleanup? And then there's another part of the language that says provide parks, recreation opportunities, and trails. Does that mean that money can be taken from the LPC fund again to build parks when we already have the Parks and Pathways millage? And lastly, has any money, and I think Barry just answered this very effectively, has any money from the last 18 years been used for anything other than conservation easements and the necessary components to to support that. In other words, have there been other raids on the LPC funds that have been diverted to other projects? But I hope you all understand that I believe what Jonathan was saying is that the problem is our Board of Trustees and primarily the supervisor, and the LPC is an innocent bystander and got run over by the controversy. And I hope you all know how valuable and how much many of us support you. Thank you for giving us this time.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Rob.
Anybody else?
That's all at our end.
All right, Pam, nothing?
Not today.
All right. thank
Well, I
you.
would just suggest that we talk about attendance, the very last thing on our agenda, which is attendance of the next meeting during this public session, so we don't have to come back to do that. Can we talk about the last agenda item?
Right
which is-
now?
Yes,
Yeah.
so then we won't have to come back.
Right, it'll
smart,
be over
because
after the public
People
session.
won't be here.
Right, well, it's a trivial matter, I think.
Yeah.
The question, because we had changed our meeting time from 3 to 4 start time to accommodate Alec, who will no longer be on the commission and is no longer on the board, we are considering moving back to 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock as a more convenient time. Is there anybody who has a feeling that we should stay with what we have or do something different? Can we have a motion to change our time?
Well,
I don't know that we need one. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, I work full-time, so 4 is actually good for me, and I presume that's why Alec wanted 4, because,
Just hard to get here.
yeah, I mean, it doesn't, 4 o'clock doesn't bother me, but I'm just one in the
Right,
group.
I would prefer 3, but I respect the fact that Lisa, you
I'm just
have to be
working
at
still.
work. You have to go to work.
Yeah.
Hello.
Is it because of the Zoom? Is that why we're thinking about doing this change?
Well, it's two things, two things that I have, maybe there's others.
Oh, that's a good point.
It's getting dark, right, and then when the building is closed, we're running out there to open the door, and if we need help with Zoom, we don't have help.
Oh, so we could actually have tech support by moving it earlier.
Well, that's
Wait,
optimistic.
Possible. Wait,
No,
I would
I
support
don't-
that because it would make the meeting more efficient if we could have
no,
tech.
I
support.
don't see that. And the building closes at 4 o'clock anyway, and we're in here at 3 o'clock. We're gonna go past 4 o'clock. And
But for later
But to get
arrivals
the
Set
Zoom
up.
started and set up.
and
for later-
tech assistance to get
Okay,
started.
yeah, that's a reason. I would rather, it suits me personally better at 4 o'clock, but it's a good reason.
Yeah, I think it almost trumps all the other reasons to stay at 4.
We lost half an hour today.
Right. I
Yeah,
mean,
that was, that's
sitting
why
here,
we're looking
We got
at.
15 minutes left and
Yeah,
we got stuff to discuss in closed session.
my brain is starting to lose
All right, so
traction.
let's make,
We can see that.
all right, I can go
Thank
with 3.
you. I've
However
stepped into
you-
that
I
one.
mean, as the, can't you just determine it as the?
Yeah, we don't have to vote on it. I don't
Yeah.
think. We can just change the meeting time, and I will let Christy and Fran know that, and they can change it on the website.
Jim, are you okay with that?
I am sensitive to someone who's working full-time and struggles here.
Right, I think that's
That's
important.
just ridiculous.
But I would be willing to,
Can we write a note for your employer?
I need no note and I
Very
just,
soon.
I left, I mean, if going earlier could get some help on the tech support, then I think that's more important.
Yeah, it was nice having Jessica here to help, that's for sure.
I mean, I'm a
Well,
sorry.
let's decide then that next meeting will begin at 3. And that is, what is the date? November 10th, okay. And how many people are able to come to that meeting? Raise your hand. Not, all right. So most of us, but Tim, have a nice time in sunny California.
I might be up in the.
All right,
snow.
then may we have a motion to
So I would
go?
like,
Decided on 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock.
I'd like to make a motion that we go into closed sessions in order to discuss, help me here, discuss
Pending.
Pending.
Property evaluation.
Property evaluations, yeah.
Thank you. Pending, I knew evaluations was in there, to discuss pending property evaluation.
Seconded.
All right, moved and seconded. All in favor?
Oh, we have to do a roll call with
We
that.
do have to roll call.
Yeah, and so
Roll call?
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
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 and
Lisa?
Lisa,
Go ahead.
yes or no?
Yes.
And I'm a
Thank
yes.
you.
Thank
All
you.
right, and you're gonna turn the
Yes.
Zoom off. Good. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you.